Hello friends and welcome to the Freedom Factory. We are up to episode 14. Now this episode could also be called by its other name, which is the final episode of season 1 of the Freedom Factory. That's right, the show The Freedom Factory is coming to an end and there is no immediate plans for a season 2. This is happening for a variety of reasons and we will cover that later in the show along with where to from here. But first, we're going to work through some news. So now I just want to have a look at a blog. This blog is written by Caroline Rainsford, who is the country director for Google New Zealand. It was written on the 3rd of August. Quote, as we approach 15 years on the ground in New Zealand, Google is investing to put down stronger roots here, including by establishing an engineering presence in Auckland. This week, our teams moved into the first purpose-built Google office in Auckland, a space that has been designed to bring the best of Aotearoa to Google. Now, I also want to have a look at another article here. And it is titled, Leaked Document Says Google Fired Dozens of Employees for Data Misuse. This is written by Joseph Cox from the 5th of August, and I quote, Google fired dozens of employees between 2018 and 2020 for abusing their access to the company's tools or data, with some workers potentially facing allegations of accessing Google user or employee data, according to an internal Google document obtained by Motherboard. The document provides concrete figures on an often delicate part of the tech giant's operations, investigations into how the company's own employees leverage their position to steal, leak, or abuse data they may have access to. Insider abuse is a problem across the tech industry. Motherboard previously uncovered instances at Facebook, Snapchat and MySpace with employees in some cases using their access to stalk or otherwise spy on users. The document says that Google terminated 36 employees in 2020 for security-related issues. 86% of all security-related allegations against employees included mishandling of confidential information such as the transfer of internal-only information to outside parties. Now this is exactly the kind of data breaches that could enable the stealing of the New Zealand election if they occurred at Catalyst. Now I covered this major national security vulnerability in my election specials number 1 and 2, and you can see them on the web pages and on our sites. I am also planning more election coverage coming up, so that is something to look forward to. On with the show. So with the confirmation this week of the closing of the Marsden Point refinery, I'd like to draw your attention to an article from June. This article is from the 2nd of June and it is titled Marsden Point Closure Could Expose New Zealand to Fuel Security Risks, Report Says. This is by Phil Pennington and it is from RNZ. The government has been warned that closing down the country's only oil refinery could expose New Zealand to fuel security risks. The Energy Minister said these risks are not significant, but a consultant's report to the government says the opposite. The risks centre on reconfiguring supply chain, meaning that the country would hold significantly less fuel because it held no crude awaiting processing. It goes on to say a 14-page consultant's report to the Ministry of Business Innovation in March 2020 listed 8 risks to stopping refining. Those risks included between a quarter and a third less overall fuel stock in the country, no ability to correct imports that are not up to standard, no ability to process crude in a global supply emergency. It summed up, the change of the Marsden Point facility to a fuels terminal would have a significant impact on New Zealand's fuel security. By contrast, Wood's spokesperson last night said officials had advised the conversion is not expected to have a significant impact on fuel security. So the phrase that I really want to draw your attention to in this is no ability to correct imports that are not up to standard. New Zealand already has a reputation of having poor quality fuels, and this will remove our ability to blend down poorer shipments into a more acceptable quality and in effect force us to accept whatever is thrust upon us. So expect that in upcoming months that we're going to see more and more poor quality fuels dumped on the New Zealand market.
Are you getting the vaccine? They say the only thing that'll save us is the vaccine. The government, media, and celebrities are using fear to force you into something that you may not be sure about.
So now we're going to have a bit of a vaccine update, and we're starting with a post yesterday from Sue Gray. An important message. New Zealand doctors speaking out with science want to spread the word now amongst those who seem very good at opposing government narrative that we have yesterday sent a list to the government. Jacinda, Chris, Ashley, MedSafe, MCNZ of the 100 confirmed vaccine-related deaths we have collated to date, so they can no longer ignore what they are lying about. We have many more deaths still to write up, with 2 per day coming in on average, plus hundreds of injuries. Example, strokes, heart attacks, lung clots, etc. Please spread far and wide. Quite a serious development there. And definitely a well-researched 100 people there and 2 coming in per day, so quite serious there. And I wanted to contrast that with an article here from the 4th of August, and it's titled Port Workers Vaccinations, a disproportionate uptake of misinformation. Quote, based on the feedback I've had from representatives of port workers, there does appear to be a disproportionate uptake of misinformation by port workers that is increasing hesitancy, Minister Chris Hipkins says. He said it was also a concern for overall vaccination rates, and misinformation would likely become an even greater problem as the vaccine rollout continued. Misinformation overall is something that I think is going to become more of a problem for us as we get towards the end of the year, he said. Misinformation is what has kept 44% of port workers from getting even a single dose of Pfizer vaccine, COVID-19, and it raises concerns about the rollout's later stages. And I just wonder if it is the same misinformation that inspired over 100 people to come out in protest yesterday at the Tauranga port, in a heartwarming example of what is the real new normal, that is ongoing protests for human rights in New Zealand.
If you do mess up somebody's pronouns, all you need to do is correct yourself and apologize. You don't need to fall over yourself saying, oh God, I totally love transgender people. I've seen all 4 seasons of Transparent. Because no one has seen all 4 seasons of Transparent. Now, I've had people mess up my pronouns before, and to be perfectly honest, I tend to forget about it as soon as it happens, which is why I keep a little notebook around with me so I can write down the names of who did it and when they did it, because you never know when you're going to need a little leverage from time to time.
So we are now going to have a look at a revelation that came out of the New Zealand schools this week, and it was first broken by Helen Horton and a few others, but the story's actually been best covered by Carol Sawyer, so I'm going to read from her post now. Words fail me. This is class material from a so-called health class held on July the 28th at a girls' school in the Lower North Island. It was a Year 10 class, which is 14 and 15-year-old girls. The parents of one child have laid an official complaint, so the school cannot be named at this point, pending investigation and official response. I have verified this with one of the parents involved. They are not naming the school at this stage, but are waiting for a response. The principal has told them that both she and the Board of Trustees have received the complaint and will be speaking to the teacher concerned, and will be back to them next week. The only reason the parents knew about it is that their daughter photographed the material in class and sent it to them from her phone. Parents were obviously not consulted, and no attempt was made to let them know what their children were being taught in this so-called health class. Page 1 is utterly outrageous. These are 14-year-old girls being asked by their teacher questions such as, if you have never slept with a member of your own sex, is it possible that you might be gay if you tried it? The questions. Page 1. Heterosexuality. Try to answer each question as though you are heterosexual. Number 1. What do you think caused your heterosexuality? Number 2. When and how did you first decide you were heterosexual? Number 3. Is it possible that your heterosexuality is just a phase? You may grow out of it. Number 4. Is it possible that your heterosexuality stems from a fear of others of the same sex? Number 5. If you have never slept with a member of your own sex, is it possible that you might be gay if you tried it? Number 6. If heterosexuality is normal, why are so many mental patients heterosexual? Page 2. Number 7. Why do you heterosexual people try to seduce others to your lifestyle? 7a. Why do you flaunt your heterosexuality? Can't you just be who you are and keep it quiet? Number 9. The great majority of child molesters are heterosexual. Do you consider it safe to expose your children to heterosexual teachers? Number 10. With all the societal support that marriage receives, the divorce rate is spiralling. Why are there so few stable relationships amongst heterosexual people? 11. Why are heterosexual people so promiscuous? 12. Would you want your children to be heterosexual knowing the problems they would face, such as heartbreak, disease and divorce? Postscript. Someone has pointed out to me that this was a questionnaire developed in 1977 by Martin Rochlin, a pioneer in the field of gay affirmative psychotherapy. He died in 2003. One reason given is this: to help non-LGBT people understand how it feels to be placed in such a situation. The following questionnaire was devised, which is based on heterophobic premises rather than homophobic premises, which exist chronically in our society. However, it seems it was developed for staff and or university students, and certainly not for 14 and 15-year-old girls. Here is a resource package that was developed by a graduate intern at the University of California, San Diego LGBT Resource Center for students, staff, RAs and their supervisors to use in educating one another and residents on gender and sexuality identity issues. There will be links in the description if you'd like to follow this up. This is quite outrageous, the kind of stuff that's in the classroom now. So a lot of people got a lot of stuff to say about this. So last night there was the first meeting of FONSA, and it was held at the New Brighton Community Centre, and it was attended well with about 40 people turning up. There were speakers and discussions about our rights and freedoms, and those attending described it as a success. As the attendees left the event, they became aware that many of the vehicles had been egged. There was, in the week before the event, an attempt to have it cancelled with complaints to the council. And so it does seem that the failure to get the event cancelled has inspired what can only be described as a childish act. Of course, a complaint has been laid with the police, and this is a good reminder of the intellectual maturity of our opposition on the streets.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first. Unfortunately,
of you, we're in this mess. Forever you will acquiesce. How you love to be deceived. Whatever they tell you, you believe. Dead of sight, dead of mind, news believer, you are blind. Critical thinker, you are not. Never independent thoughts. Bust into your paradigm. Hypnotized with pantomime. Regurgitating all you hear. Spread your terror, spread your fear. Never your mind to be free. Never your eyes will ever see. Lick the boot of tyranny, begging for your slavery. They who have remote control, the TV know your very soul. Tune into the great deceiver, television watching news believer. Inject your poison, wear your mask. All they have to do is ask. Never questioning authority. Blindly following like sheep. Yes sir, no sir, free backs full. You television watching fool. Never your mind to be free. Never your eyes will ever see. Lick the boot of tyranny, begging for your slavery. They who have remote control, the TV know your very soul. Tune into the great deceiver, television watching news believer.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is 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 extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In their world forever locked. Into their world television watching news believe. Never your mind to be free. Never your eyes will ever see. Lick the boot of tyranny, begging for your slavery. They who have remote control the TV show your very soul. Tune into the correct receiver. Television watching news believer.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 So as I covered in the intro, this is the final show, at least for season 1. And this has really happened for a variety of reasons, but the biggest reason is the shadow banning. The reality of information-dense content like this show has been is that it needs to be built one detail at a time. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. The show is really a full-time job, and there has not been an episode that has taken less than 30 hours to produce. Now, my audience have been very supportive and shared the show a lot. You know, you guys have done really well, but it doesn't mean that the algorithm actually shows it to people, and this really is the problem. It does seem that the better the show, the more it is suppressed. Now, my audience have also donated to support the show, and considering the limited reach, you have been generous. It works out to about $30 a week. And obviously I didn't start the show to make money, but the reality is that, I am more or less poor, and I'm not on a benefit, and I haven't been for years. I support myself with part-time work, and I dedicate as much time to the struggle as I can because, this is hope. The system we have has disenfranchised a huge number of us, and a country really writes off its children at its peril. This has already happened in New Zealand, and this disaster has already been built. It's been decades in the making. There really is no going back. In recent weeks, many people in the movement have been experiencing a ramping up of the shadow banning, but I have not. I have been on this new level of suppression since April. And it is interesting that I have never had my Facebook account banned. I've never even had a warning. And, I can't think of anybody else in the movement that has never been banned. They just don't show new people my stuff. Now, I don't want to be that guy that blames everything else. And, I have been working on the idea that content is king. That if I just make the show better, it will find a bigger audience based on merit. And given time, it would, but we don't have time left. The truth is that we are being manipulated through the weaponizing of the algorithm, and this manipulation is far more pervasive and it's far more insidious than we realize. This final show is also different because I do not have the assistance of the show's producer Ace, who has been a big part of making this crazy idea happen. Now, we are proud of what we have made, and we like to think of it as a bit of a cult classic, and you've all been a part of this. So where to from here? Well, I will continue to do lives, and I will make other content, and I will release it as and when it is ready. In short, the Freedom Factory will stay in production, just not a regular show. It has been an interesting time over the last couple of weeks, and this show is ending at what is really a pivotal time in world history, a pivotal time in the history of our nation. And I feel that this calls for a montage.
No, they didn't isolate the virus. That's the issue.
Well, you isolate a virus by
Clearly, logic and common sense dictate that if you have not isolated the thing you are looking for, there is no possible way to determine what the thing is made of or what it alone does.
You may be interested to know that the prize for providing the proof of isolation and genetic content for SARS-CoV-2 has jackpotted up to €1 million.
We make it clear we're not just asking for something maybe where you yourself isolated. We're saying any record of it being isolated anywhere in the world by anyone, and they have nothing.
Yet all of the listed institutions indicated the same, that they had searched their records and located none describing legitimate isolation of any SARS-CoV-2 patient sample performed by anyone, anywhere on the planet, ever. And if the virus actually existed, should this information not be at their fingertips?
This is the entire gig right here. If these are not pathogens, then why are we putting masks on? And why are we social distancing?
Here's some news that you guys should actually know about, because we know the media won't ever cover this. This is John Magufuli, former president of Tanzania, died March 17th, 2021. This is Hamed Bakayoko, former prime minister of the Ivory Coast, dead March 10th, 2021. This is Jovenel Moïse, former president of Haiti, died July 7th, 2021. This is Pierre Amadou Kali, the former prime minister of Ivory Coast, died June 6, 2020. This is Ambrose Dlamini, former president of Eswatini, died December 13th, 2020. This is Andry Rajoelina, president of Madagascar, and he just survived an assassination attempt. Can you guess what they all had in common, except for all dying within a year of each other? They all denied the vaccines in their country. I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Dear friends, something is happening. The entrenched front of the makers of Corona is crumbling and dissolving. And that is because the power of us, the power of humanity, is greater than the power of those on the other side, the inhumans. Humanity with emotions will always prevail over digitalization and artificial intelligence. I say this after the Berlin Corona Investigative Committee has, since its inception on July 10th, 2020, heard testimony from more than 110 highly respected experts from all over the world on the questions of how dangerous is the virus, how dangerous are the anti-corona measures to human life and health and to the economy, and how reliable is the Drosten PCR test underlying all these measures worldwide.
Alberta has come under a lot of criticism after announcing it will lift all of its COVID-19 restrictions, even as cases continue to rise. As of today, contact tracing will largely be the responsibility of the person who tests positive. Asymptomatic testing will no longer be recommended. On August 16th, the province will be dropping its mandatory masking orders. And that same day, Albertans will no longer be required to isolate if they test positive for COVID-19. It will simply be a recommendation. She's standing by her decision to lift the COVID health orders in Alberta, and Dr. Deena Hinshaw joins me now. Thanks for taking the time, Dr. Hinshaw.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You know, this won't come as news to you, but a number of medical experts have criticized your decision, including the Canadian Pediatric Society and the Alberta Medical Association. So, you know, why are you confident that this is the way to go at this stage in the pandemic?
Yeah, I believe I have an obligation to continually assess the proportionality of the requirements that I place on Albertans province-wide in terms of legal mandates to do or not do certain things. The proportionality of the requirements that I place on Albertans province-wide.
Libertà, libertà, no Green Pass, no Green Pass, no Green Pass, no Green Pass.
For how long you were in the parachute regiment? I was in the parachute regiment for nearly 5 years. And it's very gruelling to get in. It's second only sort of to SAS and SBS, I believe. Yeah, it wasn't an easy couple of months, that's for sure. Yeah. No, guaranteed. Yeah. and so, why are you out here today? Are you out here in relation to the way there have been attacks on the armed forces? Well, to be honest with you, to take the armed forces out of it, this is about humanity. To take that uniform off of us and them, this is more than that. For me personally, and I can only offer my humble opinion as a human being, but I have seen these tactics and used these tactics on operations abroad, and now we're watching them happen in our own country. And because the British soldiers, the British men and women have done such a good job of keeping foreign books off the soil for such a long time, and this is a psychological warfare, not one of bullets and bombs, it's a difficult one for people to understand. But because I can see it, I will stand, because I vow to protect the people, and that's what we're going to do. Yeah. And what do you think about the way that the Gurkhas have been treated? Because they've been doing their protests opposite 10 Downing Street. Nobody anywhere is getting any recognition to any extent of what they would like to achieve at the moment. And it doesn't matter what demographic, what race, what physical ability or acumen you have. Once again, it doesn't matter. This is about humans. Strip it all. Strip the colour, strip the uniform. That does not matter. This is skin and bone that's being attacked in. And that skin and bone that I've watched many brave men and women die for. To give freedom to this country and the very people that I went and fought against. And now I'm sitting here realising that I was facing in the wrong direction. All I want for the people is honesty. I just want them to be honest about this vaccine and the dangers. And then if you want to make that decision after that, that's down to you. But this lot needs to be honest and they're not telling you the truth. Thank you, my brother.
Hi, Helen. I'm just wondering if you can tell me what test you are using to distinguish between the normal COVID and the Delta variant?
Okay, the test covers both.
You're using the standard PCR test to test for both the COVID and Delta.
I might put you through to our lab. Just one moment. They might be able to explain that a bit better. Just one moment.
Thank you.
Microbiology, this is Barbara.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Barbara. Just wondering, so that is to test people with either COVID or the Delta variant, is that right?
That's correct.
So how do you distinguish between the two? Like, how do you distinguish this? You don't?
We don't distinguish between the COVID and the normal COVID and Delta.
Okay, so if you don't, then how are the government getting the statistics that, you know, there's so many Delta variants breaking out in Sydney or Queensland, that sort of thing?
You would have to ask them. I'm not sure how they're doing that.
Right. Okay, thanks very much.
I have always said very clearly that in the suppression phase, lockdowns have to work. Vaccines certainly support it, and Delta is like nothing else we've seen and is a complete game changer. But I want to stress something I said yesterday. To get to phase B, when we go into 70% of the country having been double dose vaccinated.
It's bullshit. Our human rights are being taken away from us.
Like, you live in Victoria, what human rights do you think you have?
Serious? Look how much fucking force they've got here. This is beyond a joke.
But look at you, you look scary.
I fucking am scary.
Just so you understand, the social distancing between police is maybe half a metre. This is how they come in formation. This is how they spread around the city to enforce COVID restrictions.
The side that is locking people up for the crime of being healthy, arresting protesters, pepper spraying kids and beating up grannies, banning books and electronic messages, censoring social media, sending threatening letters, forcing small businesses to close, urging people to dob into centres and banning safe drugs that have worked for 60 years are all on the wrong side of history. In a frightening development, New South Wales has called in the troops to keep innocent, healthy citizens locked in their homes in what can only be called martial law. Recent freedom marches showed what happens to citizens who exercise their democratic right to protest. People are demonised, hunted down. The media vilifies to discourage others from questioning the control state. If the government can decide who is free and who is not, then that is not freedom, and no one is free. It's been calculated that the civil disobedience tipping point, which is the maximum capacity of the police to arrest people, of the jails to hold people, and of the courts to process people, is, in Australia, around 100,000 people. Anything more than that and the system comes crashing down. Attendance at the freedom rallies last month shows we're almost there. No wonder the Morrison government has been scared into resorting to the refuge of tyrants, the military, to intimidate citizens into compliance, and to mandating injections threatening to rip away people's livelihoods. Everyday Australians are seeing through the smoke screens of fear and intimidation. People now see the cost of the restrictions to family and community exceeds the medical cost of the virus. Everyday Australians have spoken. We will not be divided. We are united. We are one community. We are one nation.
We in New Zealand do need to look at that and make sure we are taking the lessons that we need to take from that experience.
So the first thing that I thought I would cover off is that, of course, many of you will have seen or may have even participated in some form. Firstly, in New Zealand, we guard and protect people's right to protest. The second thing that I'd say is that some of the issues that are being raised today, you know, they are issues that we've heard. And in many cases, or at least in some cases, we've been working hard to respond to.
A short, sharp move to COVID-19 alert level 4.
And so it's really important that we stick to the commitments that we've made. There are big challenges coming at us, really big ones. You know, they are related to people's right to protest, to design that response now, and that is a really practical response to the challenge that we have in front of us.
So we're adjusting our response and our likely response to new, more infectious variants as we seek to ensure that COVID-19 does not gain a foothold here in New Zealand.
One burst came very close to our tail, and several times we were caught by searchlights.
We would look to respond very quickly to any potential case of COVID-19 in the community.
The next day we lost CV Gallagher, and Jack's diary ends here.
Yes, we would continue to use our contact tracing systems, but we would also look to escalate alert levels quickly in the event that we discovered a case of COVID-19.
So Jack Crawford was my great uncle. Like many other Kiwis at the time, he went over to fight in the Second World War for the freedom of New Zealanders.
A short, sharp move to COVID-19 alert level 4 for either the affected area or the whole country, depending on the circumstances, in the event that we saw a case of COVID-19 emerge.
I think it's really important to keep talking about those that aren't here now and those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice in trying to protect New Zealanders in a pretty difficult time, that took that huge trip and paid the ultimate price in trying to protect us. So these are the questions that are before us, really. Will we comply with unlawful edicts? Will we allow our democracy to be stolen with fraudulent elections? Will we let our children inherit a dictatorship? Of course the mad queen will fall, and this madness will not stand. The only questions are how much damage is done before it falls, and what part each of us will play in that. Being bold and making these stands is tiring, but each time we gain mana, each time we grow stronger as a people. There has been over recent years a growing hopelessness in this country, and it has been driving the absolutely disgraceful suicide rate. I ask you, what will happen when they see the cracks appear? See a chance to take the power back? What do you think will happen? Mass non-compliance, it is the only way. There is next weekend a protest to affirm our right to say no to vaccine passports, no to coercion. Next Saturday, the 21st of August at 12 p.m. In Christchurch is at the Bridge of Remembrance, and Wellington it is at the Cenotaph Memorial just down from the Beehive. There will be a protest in Auckland, and we are yet to confirm the location for that, so keep an eye out for that one. Now, if there is a lockdown, then it is absolutely still on. There's just more reason to protest. Keep an eye out for our upcoming videos, and there are some projects in the pipeline. There will be links in description, of course, for donations on the website if you want to support the ongoing work that I'm doing. And I would like to thank my many friends that have really helped make this show happen. Without them, it simply wouldn't have happened. And with a special thanks to Jason Stagg, whose house we are here filming today. So, most importantly, I'd like you all to look after yourselves and the people around you as best you can. You know, that is really how we get through struggles like this. And thank you all very much for watching The Freedom Factory.